Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP of our Cleveland Guardians, Bobby DiBiasio, with us on WAKR, WAKR.net, and of course our Facebook page. And Hey Bobby is brought to you by Nika IBEW. Takes time out of his schedule to join us each week to talk about the team, the business, and everything associated with baseball history, and our Cleveland Guardians. And Bobby, that's where I wanted to start today. Is you and I have often talked about League Park and the history of the team. And then we spent a lot of time talking about our new ballpark, which is wonderful, and the renovation's happy. But sometimes we forget about that big guy in the middle. That big guy in the middle has a lot of history with me, at least, with my first game ever of going to professional baseball at Municipal Stadium. I remember it was a doubleheader, Indians, Yankees, and Gomer Hodge had a big pinch hit single to win the game. But I remember coming up the hallway and looking at that green grass for the very first time. I spent some time. I remember going out to the picnic area out in center field where I met Luke Easter, as a matter of fact, at one of those games. But I thought maybe you could reflect a little bit Municipal Stadium, how you see it, how you remember it, and really the ballpark itself, because it was monstrous.
Well, cavernous, monstrous, just an incredible building. So many memories come flying through when you just think about Cleveland Stadium. My mother was a member of the Bass Bells, which was a female version of a fan club. And so we would go behind, Bass Bells would have behind the fence parties, and my two older brothers and I, my mom and her girlfriends with their kids would take us to the ball games and hang out. Like you said, you met Luke Easter, we'd meet all the players, and it was really, those behind the fence parties were something incredibly special. It's funny you brought up Gomer Hodge. Before we got on the call, you indicated that he had a pinch hit RBI to win a game on your first visit. It's funny. Yeah. I don't remember my first visit to Cleveland Stadium for a baseball game. I for some reason, I just don't have that recollection. But Gomer Hodge, I do remember in that season of 1970. I'm a sophomore, I believe, in high school, not a freshman, sophomore year. Lakewood High, opening day, and Gomer Hodge gets 2 hits and is the hero on opening day. And then he has another pinch hit. He ends up going 4 for 4 in his first 4 at bats. And if you look him up on baseballreference.com, he only played for us for that season and very few at bats. Didn't have a very long career, guy from North Carolina. Rush Snyder, I'll never forget it, in his batting around column in the Plain Dealer. Gomer was 4 for 4, and he asked him, he says, "You're off to a hot start." And Gomer answered, "You're absolutely right. I'm batting 4,000. So whenever Gomer's name gets popped up, that's the first thing my brain goes to is remembering that as a kid in Rush Snyder's batting around. But the building, some mythology around the building of Cleveland Stadium in July of 1932. One of the stories, which is not true, was that it was built to hopefully have Cleveland obtain the 1932 Summer Olympics. And so they needed this massive track and field facility in addition to a place you could play baseball and football and have boxing matches and all the things that happened at the facility. Mel Harder lost to Lefty Grove 1-0 on opening day of Cleveland Stadium. And then when it closed, October 3rd of 1993, how remarkable was it for us to have Mel Harder, who started the first game ever in that building, toss out the final pitch in Cleveland Stadium right before Bob Hope sang "Thanks for the Memories." Bob being a former owner, childhood in Cleveland, a former owner of the organization in the 60s, sang and wrote specific lyrics to the closing of Cleveland Stadium and sang "Thanks for the Memories," as we had all the great third basemen at third base and all the pitchers, great pitchers. We paraded them out at their position. What a wonderful, wonderful closing of that building. A lot of history in that building.
What did you like most? Because often people will take, the mistake on the lake and all that stuff. And maybe that's associated with maybe not some great baseball in the 70s and in the early part of the 80s. But to me, what I like most about the ballpark was the outfield picnic area. And then I kind of like the old-fashioned seating in front where people could walk in front of you and get to their seats. I kind of like that a little bit. It was just an old-fashioned ballpark. But to you, what did you like most about Municipal Stadium?
Well, for those that remember it, Section 1 was in right center field. And then as you came to home plate, Section 22, and then Section 43 was the very last section and down left field. A lot of things that were fun about that. Section 22 in the lower upper deck seats, you felt you were hanging over the catcher and the umpire. I just thought those were the best seats in the house, and the press box was just right above that. So to be able to go to work and sit right above that section where we'd buy bleacher seats and try to sneak in like everybody else to the great seats, buy bleacher seats for 50 cents and then, have trouble sneaking in other places. We sometimes we're successful and other times we were not. Just it's all we knew. So it was our home. It was the place we played. I actually was a vendor for a few years in high school with a bunch of buddies. We'd head down there to see if we could hawk peanuts or hot dogs or whatever. And but again, it's where we grew up. The 4 all-star games, the 3 largest attendances in the history of all-star games for Major League Baseball. It's over, I think it was 72,000, the one in August of 1981 that welcomed baseball back from the strike. The things that happened there, Ray, just off the top of your head, Bob Feller threw a no-hitter there. Lenny Barker, of course, threw a perfect game. A lot of people don't know that Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak extended to 56 games at League Park. Then the very next day, they play at Cleveland Stadium. And it gets snapped because third baseman Kenny Keltner made some incredible plays on Joe DiMaggio. So his 56-game hitting streak was snapped. And then, of course, you've got Larry Doby integrating baseball in the American League at Cleveland Stadium. Frank Robinson being the first Black manager in the history of the game. Andre Thornton, a little trivia. Andre Thornton hit the most home runs of any player in the history of Cleveland Stadium. So might win a beer on that one if you ask people who hit the most home runs from 1932 to 1993. In the history of that stadium. But
I was there for a couple of things that stand out to me about my trips, and then I want to move on to the next one. I was there to see, it was a Saturday game of the week, Mark the Bird Fidrich pitching for the Tigers that afternoon, and we actually bopped him around that day when he was getting everybody, and Andre Thornton had a big game that day, and I had a great seat for that game. I was also, I think at that time, it might have been history making, I was at a Indians-Yankees game there where Carlos Baerga hit a home run, I think in the same inning on opposite sides of the plate.
First time ever.
Yeah, and I thought that was history. And I was at that game, and I was sitting up where you were just talking about, behind home plate in the upper seats there. So I had a great vantage point of his 2 home runs that night. But a wonderful ballpark, Municipal Stadium. I thought we'd spend some time on that. Bobby, another thing that has spent a lot of time, it doesn't happen by accident, and it's the wonderful menus and eats that we have at Progressive Field, our current ballpark. And I think Cleveland is very unique. I've been to a lot of ballparks, maybe not as many as you, but I think we're very unique in the food items, the menu items that are offered for us baseball fans when we go through the gates. And that doesn't happen by accident. I know the organization spends a lot of time doing their research and making it the experience of food, which is part of baseball as well. And maybe you could expand a little bit on the organization and what goes into creating all these choices for us.
I don't know if there's another sport that is as closely aligned to food than baseball. Minor league baseball, big league baseball. I've never been to a soccer match in Europe, so I can't really speak to what that's all about. But our connection and marriage to having a nice, relaxing day. When you walk into a ballpark, I firmly believe one of the things that's on your mind is, okay, what are we going to eat today? I don't think that's true when you walk into an indoor arena or a football stadium. And as we have, over the course of 30 years now at Progressive Field, have really gone through a number of different changes. You know, when we opened Progressive Field in 1994, we really pounded our chest and were so proud that we were announcing that we were going to have 72 different food items for the first time for our Cleveland fans, the things that we could not do at Cleveland Stadium because we had new kitchens, we had more concession stands, all of that played a role in how you can prepare and provide that service for your fans. And then after we were rolling along, 6, 7, 8 years, it became obvious that 72 were just too many. People just didn't gravitate towards certain things. For example, there was a time when we offered sushi from a restaurant just across the street from us. And we'd look at the sheets halfway through the season and it would have like $200 was spent at that location, which is not a good return on your investment for real estate in your ballpark. And we took it away, and I'm walking around the ballpark and this guy walks up to me and goes, "How in the world could you take away the sushi stand?" And I said, and I was like, "We found you. You're the guy. You're the guy. We've only had $200." He goes, "Yeah, that is me. I'm the guy." I said, I'm sorry, but since we opened, you're allowed to bring in your own food. So, again, right across the street, I said, "You could go there, pick it up and bring it in with you." And he goes, "I just may have to do that." And then when we redesigned the building, redid the entryway out in center field and added the Boudreaux statue and the Dobie statue and Jimmy Tomey on the inside, and sliced some of the mezzanine deck so we could get more light in that right field area. The decision in the corner bar and all of that concept, the decision was made that we need to bring the local aspect inside our ballpark. So we went to about 20 restaurants, Cleveland owned, Cleveland restaurateurs, and offered them an opportunity to come and have concession stands, Momocho and Barrio and Dante and a number of others. Some jumped on it, some declined, and then the number ended up at 13. And so we think that is just an absolutely terrific partnership with currently Delaware North / Sports Service, which is what they were used to be known as, to offer our fans an incredible variety. But Hot dogs are still number one seller.
I was just going to ask you, is
Yeah.
hot dogs still number one?
Still number one. People love their pulled pork nachos at Momocho and Barrio. Those are big time sellers as well. The Montgomery Inn pork sandwich that's available is also a pretty hot item in Dante's Pizza. But hot dogs, of course, still number one.
When I walk through the gate, my son and I, our first thing is go get the nachos with cheese and salsa. We get our soda and we sit down and watch a ball game.
You get it in the helmet.
We do.
I just love on occasion walking in and out of the restroom during a game, and there's people lined up to wash the helmet out because there's cheese all over the bottom of the helmet. They don't want to sit there with it because they want to take the helmet home, of course. And we just laugh, and there's nothing left. Everybody eats every last drop of it. So
yeah, well, you guys,
there's no, like radio and baseball are a marriage made in heaven. Food and baseball are as well.
I agree. It's sitting down, relaxing, having your favorite food, and watching baseball. Another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP with the Cleveland Guardians, Bobby DiBiasio, brought to you by Nika IBEW. My friend, thank you for making time again. Always appreciated. We'll reconnect again next week. Thanks again, Bobby.
Thank you, Ray. Look forward to it, buddy. Go Guardians.